When one man fought an airline's refusal to escort a fallen soldier, his courage didn't just bring a hero home, it sparked a powerful movement that changed everything. In a small town, there lived a man named Michael, a quiet and humble individual with a strong heart and deep respect for the people who serve their country. Michael was not a soldier himself, but he had always felt connected to the military through his family and the stories he heard growing up. His father was a veteran, and from a young age, Michael learned to appreciate the sacrifices made by men and women in uniform. He understood the value of honor, courage, and the importance of remembering those who gave their lives for others. One afternoon, Michael received a phone call that changed everything. It was news about a fallen soldier, a young man from a nearby city who had lost his life while serving overseas. The soldier's name was Corporal James Carter. James was only 23 years old and had been deployed on a dangerous mission. His death left his family devastated, and the community mourned the loss of someone so brave and full of life. Michael listened carefully to the news, feeling a deep sadness, but also a growing desire to do something meaningful. He knew that when a soldier dies far from home, there is a tradition to bring their body back so they can be laid to rest properly among their loved ones. This journey home, called the final flight, was a solemn and sacred mission. Sometimes a family member or a trusted escort accompanies the fallen soldier on this last trip. It was a way to honor their sacrifice, to make sure the soldier was not alone on their way back. Without hesitation, Michael decided he wanted to be that escort. He did not hesitate because he sought recognition or fame. He simply wanted to show respect and give the soldier the dignity he deserved. Michael saw this as a chance to pay tribute to James and every soldier who had faced danger for the safety of others. He felt a personal responsibility, as if he had been chosen to carry this important duty. Michael contacted the military office responsible for arranging the return of fallen soldiers. He expressed his wish to escort Corporal Carter's body back home. The officers were surprised but appreciated Michael's sincerity. They explained the process and the responsibilities involved. Escorting a fallen soldier was not just about sitting on a plane. It was about representing the gratitude of a nation, comforting a grieving family, and honoring a life that had been cut short. Michael learned that the escort would have to be with the body from the moment it was brought to the airport until it reached the family's home. The role required him to remain calm, respectful, and attentive. He would need to follow strict protocols and show utmost dignity at every step. It was a solemn task, but Michael welcomed the challenge. As the days passed, Michael prepared himself, mentally and emotionally. He talked to veterans, family members of soldiers, and others who had experienced similar journeys. Each conversation deepened his understanding of the weight of this responsibility. They told him stories about the fallen, the pain of loss, and the healing power of respect and remembrance. Michael also thought about James, trying to imagine the young man's life and dreams. James had wanted to become a teacher after his service, hoping to inspire children with lessons of courage and kindness. He was known for his laughter and his willingness to help others. Michael wanted to make sure that the final journey honored not just a soldier, but a young man with hopes, fears, and a bright future that was never realized. Meanwhile, the community around Michael learned about his intention to escort the fallen soldier. Many people offered support, sending messages of encouragement and gratitude. Some brought flowers and small gifts to honor the courage that Michael was about to represent. The town felt a shared pride. Michael became a symbol of respect and honor in their eyes. The day before the flight, Michael met with the military officials to go over the details. He learned about the plane that would carry the fallen soldier and the protocol for boarding. He was told to dress in formal clothes, to maintain silence and dignity throughout the journey, and to be prepared for an emotional experience. Michael accepted these instructions with quiet determination. That evening, Michael sat alone in his home, reflecting on what lay ahead. He thought about the many soldiers who had returned home before, some with wounds visible, others with scars hidden inside. He thought about the families who had waited anxiously, hoping for a miracle that sometimes never came. And he thought about James, now on his way back from a distant land, hero in the truest sense. Michael felt a mixture of sadness, pride, and solemnity. He knew this was more than a duty. It was a sacred trust. He was not just escorting a body. He was carrying a nation's respect and love. He was the guardian of a final moment of peace for a soldier who had given everything. The next morning, Michael woke up early and prepared himself carefully. He wore a dark suit and polished his shoes, making sure every detail was perfect. He wanted to be ready, not just in appearance but in spirit. As he left his home and headed to the airport, he felt the weight of the journey ahead, but also the strength of his purpose. At the airport, Michael was greeted by the military personnel who had arranged everything. They showed him the area where the fallen soldiers' remains would arrive at. The atmosphere was quiet and respectful, with a few close family members waiting with heavy hearts. When Corporal James Carter's coffin was brought out, Michael felt a lump in his throat. The flag draped over the coffin reminded him of the sacrifice behind it. He stood tall, saluted with honor, and prepared to accompany James on the final flight home. Every step felt sacred. This was the beginning of a journey that would test Michael's strength, courage, and heart. It was a journey that started with a simple decision to say yes when it mattered most, to stand for a fallen soldier, to honor his life, and to remind the world that every sacrifice counts. Michael's story was not just about one man or one soldier. It was about respect, dignity, the power of human kindness in the face of loss. As the plane prepared to take off, Michael looked at the coffin one last time and whispered a promise. "You will never be forgotten." With that, the journey home began. Michael's journey to escort Corporal James Carter's body back home was not as simple as he had imagined. After his heartfelt decision to serve as the escort, he quickly learned that the road ahead was filled with unexpected challenges and barriers, especially from the airline that was supposed to carry the fallen soldier on his final flight. What started as a mission of respect soon turned into a battle against red tape, rules, and doubt. When Michael first contacted the airline to arrange his seat on the flight with the fallen soldier, he believed it would be a straightforward process. After all, this was a solemn and important duty. But he was met with hesitation. The airline staff were polite but firm. They told him that their policies did not clearly allow a civilian escort to accompany remains on certain flights. They cited safety concerns, paperwork issues, and insurance regulations. Michael was surprised and disappointed. He tried to explain the importance of his role, how this was not just a flight but a sacred journey to honor a fallen hero. He spoke about respect, tradition, and how escorting a soldier home was a way to ensure dignity until the very end. But the airline representatives remained cautious. They said they had never handled a situation exactly like this before, and company rules were strict about who could board with military remains. Michael refused to give up. He knew that the military had arrangements for such escorts, and many times family members or veterans were allowed to accompany fallen soldiers. Still, the airline's hesitation made him realize that he was up against more than just policy. There was a bureaucratic wall, one that seemed cold and uncaring compared to the warmth of Michael's intentions. He spent hours on the phone, writing emails and making appointments with airline officials. Each time, he had to explain who he was and why he wanted to be on the flight. Some staff were sympathetic and tried to help, but the final decision was out of their hands. Michael felt like he was pushing against a large, unmoving machine. One particular conversation stood out. A middle-aged woman working in the airline's customer relations department told Michael that they understood his feelings, but feared the liability issues if something went wrong. She mentioned strict rules about cargo space, seating, and permits. That limited who could accompany remains. She said, "We want to honor the soldiers, but we must follow company rules." This answer frustrated Michael deeply. He thought about Corporal Carter lying alone, far from home, with no one to accompany him. The thought of the soldier being treated like just another package made Michael's resolve even stronger. He felt the airline's refusal was not just about rules, it was about a lack of understanding and respect. Determined, Michael decided to reach out beyond the airline, contacted military officials, explaining the situation and asking for help. The military was supportive, but said that the airline had the final say. They offered letters explaining Michael's role and the importance of the escort duty, hoping this would persuade the airline to change its mind. Michael also reached out to veterans, groups and organizations that supported military families. Many of them responded quickly, sharing stories of escorts who had faced similar problems. They advised him on how to gather public support, how to contact the media, and how to make sure his voice was heard. With their encouragement, Michael started writing a letter to the editor of the local newspaper. He wanted to share the story of the fallen soldier and the obstacles faced in honoring him properly. Michael knew that public opinion could be powerful. If the community understood what was happening, maybe the airline would change its policy. While waiting for a response, Michael also posted on social media, sharing Corporal Carter's story and his struggle to be allowed to escort him home. The post quickly gained attention. People shared it widely, expressing support and outrage that a company could stop a man from honoring a hero. At the same time, Michael tried to stay strong for the soldier and his family. He met with Corporal Carter's parents, who were grateful, but heartbroken. They told Michael stories about James, his love for his country, and his dreams for the future. They begged Michael to keep fighting so their son could be brought home with honor. Michael spent many nights thinking about the meaning of this fight. It was no longer just about one flight or one soldier. It was about respect for every person who served, every family that waited, and every community that mourned. It was about changing a system that sometimes forgot the human side of its policies. As days passed, the airline remained firm but began to feel the pressure. The local newspaper published Michael's letter calling for respect and compassion. Veterans groups started petitions, gathering thousands of signatures. People called the airline's customer service lines, asking why they wouldn't allow the escort. The story was growing. Inside the airline, some employees began to question the rules too. They felt torn between company policies and the human side of the story. Some spoke anonymously to reporters, sharing concerns that the airline's reputation could suffer if they didn't allow Michael on the flight. Others worried about setting a precedent that could complicate future operations. Meanwhile, Michael prepared for all possibilities. He gathered documents, spoke to legal advisors, and learned about the formal rights of military escorts. He also stayed in close contact with the family, keeping them informed and hopeful. There were moments of despair. Michael felt exhausted, worn down by endless phone calls and emails. He had faced rejection and doubt, and sometimes wondered if this fight was worth it. But every time he thought about Corporal Carter and the families who depended on him, his resolve strengthened. One afternoon, Michael received a call from a senior official at the airline. The tone was different, more understanding and open. The official said they had reviewed Michael's case again and were willing to reconsider, especially after seeing the public response. They needed a formal plan to ensure safety and compliance with regulations, but wanted to work with Michael. Michael's heart leaped. This was a breakthrough, but the battle was not yet over. The airline wanted assurances, paperwork, and agreement on every detail before granting permission. Michael had to act quickly. He worked with military officers, airline staff, and veterans groups to draft a clear plan. This included Michael's responsibilities during the flight, safety measures, and communication protocols. Michael agreed. 2 strict guidelines to make sure everything went smoothly. Finally, after many days of struggle, the airline gave Michael permission to board the flight as the official escort for Corporal Carter. It was a small victory, but a powerful one. Airline also promised to review its policies to better support such escorts in the future. Michael felt a deep sense of relief and pride. He had faced a tough fight, but he had won not only for himself, but for every soldier who deserved respect on their final journey. The airline's initial refusal had tested him, but it had also changed something bigger. The story of the escort who challenged the airline became an inspiration. It showed that sometimes rules must bend when it comes to human dignity. Michael's determination reminded people that behind every policy are real lives and real sacrifices. As the day of the flight approached, Michael prepared not just for the journey but for the honor he was about to carry. The battle with the airline had taught him patience, courage, and the power of standing up for what is right. He knew that Corporal Carter's final flight was about more than just travel. It was about respect, memory, and love. And Michael was ready to be the guardian of that sacred promise. After overcoming the airline's initial refusal, Michael's battle was far from over. The permission to escort Corporal James Carter's remains was granted only after intense efforts, but the struggle to maintain respect and dignity for fallen soldiers was still ongoing. This next phase of the story was about fighting not just for one escort, but for a larger cause, ensuring that every fallen soldier could be honored properly in the future. Michael understood that what he had faced was a sign of bigger problems in the system, and he was ready to stand firm and make a difference. Once Michael received the airline's reluctant approval, he realized that it came with many conditions. The airline's leadership wanted strict guarantees that everything would proceed smoothly. Michael had to prove that he was capable of handling the responsibility with professionalism and respect. He had to attend meetings, sign agreements, and even undergo a briefing about airline safety rules, passenger behavior, and protocols related to transporting human remains. This process was exhausting, but Michael faced it with determination. He knew that this was not just about him anymore. It was about the thousands of fallen soldiers whose families deserved respect. He approached every step with care, learning the details and preparing himself mentally and emotionally. Despite the airline's grudging cooperation, Michael could sense that many within the company still saw this as an inconvenience. Some employees felt that it was easier to simply treat the soldiers' remains as cargo without extra complications. Others feared that allowing escorts might open the door to many similar requests, which they thought would complicate operations. Michael decided he had to do more than just comply. He needed to change minds and policies. He began to reach out to military officials and veterans organizations to gather support for a campaign that would push for official guidelines nationwide. The goal was to create clear, respectful procedures for escorts so that future families and escorts would not face the same barriers. The campaign started small. Michael and a few veterans' friends created petitions, gathering signatures online and in the local community. They wrote letters to lawmakers, explaining the problem and asking for help. Michael also gave interviews to local news stations, sharing the story of Corporal Carter and the struggles they had faced. Slowly but surely, the message spread. People were moved by the story of a man who had to fight simply to do what was right. The public support grew stronger as more learned about the importance of escorting fallen soldiers with dignity. Veterans groups joined the cause, lending their voices and resources. One day, a journalist from a national newspaper reached out to Michael. The reporter wanted to write a feature story about the escorts' battle and the need for change in airline policies. Michael agreed. Knowing this was a chance to bring wider attention to the issue, the article was published and quickly gained traction. It described how fallen soldiers were sometimes treated like cargo, how families struggled, how Michael's persistence had forced an airline to rethink its approach. The story highlighted the need for respect, compassion, and clearer rules. This publicity put pressure on the airline to improve its policies. Company leaders could no longer ignore the public's concern. They announced that they would review and update their rules about escorts on flights carrying military remains. This was a small but significant victory. At the same time, Michael worked closely with military officials to develop official training materials and guidelines for escorts. The goal was to create a standard process that could be shared with airlines, military personnel, and escort volunteers nationwide. This would ensure that every fallen soldier's final journey was treated with the dignity it deserved. Michael also met with lawmakers who showed interest in the issue. Some promised to introduce legislation that would require airlines to accommodate escorts for fallen soldiers, protecting their rights and ensuring respect. Michael felt hopeful that his fight was making a real difference. Throughout this time, Michael stayed connected to Corporal Carter's family. They expressed gratitude for his efforts, not only for their son, but for all soldiers who had sacrificed. The family's pain was still deep, but knowing that James's story was helping create positive change gave them comfort. As the official flight day approached, Michael prepared for his role with great care. He attended briefings with the military, learned the detailed protocols, and practiced the solemn behavior expected during the journey. Every moment felt heavy with responsibility. When the day came, Michael arrived at the airport early. The military personnel who coordinated the flight greeted him warmly. The coffin of Corporal Carter was brought to the plane with great care, draped in the American flag. Michael stood by, watching with deep respect. During the flight, Michael remained silent and dignified. The crew treated him with respect, and some passengers expressed quiet gratitude for the solemn mission he carried out. Michael thought about the many soldiers who had made the ultimate sacrifice and the families who waited anxiously for their return. He reflected on the long fight to be there, on the obstacles he had overcome, and on the wider meaning of his role. Michael knew that this was more than a personal duty. It was a statement to the world about the importance of honor and respect. When the plane landed, Michael accompanied the coffin through customs and to the military transport that would carry Corporal Carter to his hometown. The family was there to receive him, tears and gratitude mingling in a moment of deep emotion. The experience changed Michael forever. He had started this journey wanting to honor one soldier, but he ended it knowing he had helped change a system. His fight had led to new policies, wider awareness, and hope for better treatment of fallen soldiers everywhere. Michael's story became a symbol of respect and determination. It reminded people that behind every policy and procedure are human lives, stories, and sacrifices. It showed that one person's courage and persistence can lead to meaningful change. The airline, too, began to train its staff on the importance of handling military remains with dignity. New guidelines were put in place, and Michael's efforts were recognized publicly. His fight had helped create a lasting impact. Michael continued to advocate for veterans and fallen soldiers. Speaking at events and supporting families, he remained humble but proud, knowing that the journey he took was not just about one soldier, but about honor, respect, and humanity. After the plane landed safely, and Corporal James Carter's coffin was carried off with great respect, Michael's role did not end there. The final flight was only one part of the long and emotional journey that brings a fallen soldier back home. The days following the arrival were filled with a deep sense of purpose, as Michael helped the family, the community, and himself face the weight of grief and honor. What he experienced in those days was a mix of sorrow, hope, and healing. The moment the coffin was moved from the airplane to the waiting military vehicle, Michael felt the solemnity of the task more strongly than ever. The flag covering the coffin was a symbol of honor, sacrifice, and patriotism. To many, it represented the ultimate price paid for freedom and peace. To Michael, it was the story of a young man's life, cut short in service, and the promise that he would not be forgotten. Michael accompanied the military convoy that took the coffin to the family home. The journey was quiet, respectful, and deeply emotional. Along the way, townspeople who had heard about the fallen soldier's return gathered to pay their respects. Some stood quietly, others held flags or flowers, and many bowed their heads. In silent prayer, Michael noticed how this public respect helped the family. It reminded him that a soldier's sacrifice is never just a private loss. It belongs to a whole community and a whole nation. The people's silent tribute gave strength to the family, showing that they were not alone in their grief. When they reached the family home, the atmosphere was heavy with sorrow. James's parents, siblings, and close relatives were waiting. Their faces showed a mix of pain, pride, and gratitude. The loss of a son, a brother, a loved one was raw and fresh. But the presence of Michael and the military personnel brought some comfort. Michael stayed with the family, helping them through the immediate arrangements. He listened to their stories about James, the dreams he had, the jokes he loved, the kindness he showed to others. Hearing these stories, Michael felt a closer connection to the young soldier he had. Never met personally, but had grown to respect deeply. The family spoke about how important it was to them that Michael had fought. To be the escort, they thanked him for his determination, which had made a difference not only for their son, but for the dignity of all soldiers who would follow. Their gratitude was heartfelt and touching. In the days that followed, Michael helped organize the funeral service. This was a deeply moving event, attended by military officials, veterans, friends, and community members. The ceremony was filled with honor and tradition bugle calls, flag presentations, prayers, and moments of silence. Michael noticed how these rituals helped the family and the community heal. They turned grief into respect, loss into remembrance, and pain into unity. The service was not just for James, but for all who had served and sacrificed. During the ceremony, Kale stood quietly, feeling the weight of the moment. He realized that the role of an escort was more than carrying a coffin on a plane. It was about being a bridge between the past and the future, between sacrifice and memory. After the funeral, Michael stayed in touch with the family he wanted to offer support as they faced the difficult days ahead. Grief does not end with a ceremony. It continues, often quietly and painfully. Michael's presence, his listening ear, and his shared respect became a source of comfort. At the same time, Michael continued to speak out about the importance of honoring fallen soldiers. He gave interviews, participated in veteran support groups, and encouraged others to volunteer as escorts. He believed that every soldier deserved this final dignity, and every family deserved this healing process. The community where Michael lived also felt the impact of this journey. People began to understand more deeply the sacrifices made by soldiers and their families. Schools invited Michael to speak. Local groups held events to honor veterans and fallen heroes. Michael's own life was changed by the experience. He felt a new sense of purpose and connection. The pain he had witnessed was heavy, but the strength of the families and the respect shown gave him hope. He knew that honoring the fallen was a way to keep their memory alive and inspire others to appreciate the true cost of freedom. One evening, as Michael sat quietly, thinking about Corporal James Carter and the journey they had shared, he thought about the airline struggle, the flight, the arrival, and the funeral. He realized that this was more than a story about rules or policies. It was a story about humanity, courage, and the power of respect. Michael decided to write a letter to the family, expressing his gratitude for allowing him to be part of this journey. He wrote about the importance of remembering James and honoring all those who serve. The letter was a small gesture, but filled with deep emotion. In the weeks and months that followed, Michael continued to advocate for better treatment of fallen soldiers and their families. He worked with veterans organizations to create programs supporting escorts and educating the public. His voice became part of a larger movement that aimed to change how society remembers and honors its heroes. Michael's story inspired others. Volunteers came forward, willing to serve as escorts for fallen soldiers. Communities organized memorial events. Airlines and military officials worked together to improve policies. The fight that started with one man's determination grew into a powerful force for change. For Michael, the journey was also personal. He found healing through service and connection. The loss he had witnessed was profound, but the respect and love surrounding it gave meaning. He knew that every soldier's story mattered, and that honoring them was a way to keep their spirit alive. As time passed, Michael never forgot Corporal James Carter. He kept a small photo of James on his desk, a reminder of the young man's sacrifice and the journey they had shared. It was a symbol of courage, respect, and the lasting impact one person can have. Michael's experience showed that honoring fallen soldiers is not just about ceremonies or flights. It is about remembering humanity, standing for dignity, and ensuring that no sacrifice is forgotten. His journey touched many hearts and helped create a world where every soldier's final journey is treated with the honor it deserves. After the funeral of Corporal James Carter and the initial grief that surrounded his passing, Michael found himself at a new beginning, one where his role as an escort was complete. But his mission to honor fallen soldiers was far from over. The journey that began with a simple act of respect had now grown into a powerful movement. Michael understood that this story was about much more than one soldier or one flight. It was about changing how society recognizes and honors the sacrifices made by those who serve. Once the final goodbye was said and the coffin was lowered into the ground, Michael felt a deep mixture of sorrow and hope. He saw the pain in the faces of the family and friends, but he also saw their pride. They knew that James had served his country with courage and honor. The community's respect was strong, and that was a comfort to many. Michael stayed close, To the family in the days and weeks after the funeral, offering whatever support he could, he listened when they needed to talk, helped with practical matters, and simply stayed present. Grief, he realized, was a long road, and sometimes just having someone there made a difference. As time went on, Michael's role as a support person extended beyond James's family. He began connecting with other families of fallen soldiers, hearing their stories and understanding the common struggles they faced. Many families spoke about the difficulties they encountered in bringing their loved ones home and the lack of clear support from different agencies and companies. Michael's heart went out to these families. He knew how important it was to have respect and dignity in these moments. He realized that the system was not always prepared to meet the needs of grieving families, and this was something that had to change. Inspired by this, Michael worked harder to build a network of support. He connected with veterans groups, military officials, and community leaders to create programs that would make the escort process smoother and more respectful. These programs included training for volunteers, education for airlines and transportation, companies, and counseling services for families. Michael's efforts began to gain attention at a national level. His story of escorting Corporal Carter and fighting the airline's initial refusal was covered by major news outlets. People were moved by the example of one man standing up for respect and dignity. His message was clear: honoring fallen soldiers is a responsibility of every person and every organization involved. As the movement grew, Michael found himself invited to speak at events, schools, and conferences. He shared his experience not just as a story, but as a call to action. He urged people to remember the sacrifices made by soldiers and to ensure that every family received the honor and support they deserved. One of Michael's proudest moments was when he was invited to speak at a national veterans event, standing before a large audience of military personnel, veterans, and families. Michael told the story of Corporal James Carter and the struggle to escort him home. He spoke about the importance of respect, compassion, and standing up for what is right. The audience listened quietly, many moved to tears. After his speech, veterans came forward to thank him, sharing their own stories and struggles. Felt a deep connection with these people, knowing that together they were making a difference. At the same time, Michael continued working with airlines and transportation companies. The airline that had initially refused to allow him on the flight now worked closely with Michael and military officials to create clear policies for escorts. Training sessions were held for staff to teach them about the importance of compassion and respect in these situations. Other airlines took notice and began reviewing their own policies. Michael's story had sparked a nationwide conversation. Governments also started considering laws that would protect the rights of escorts and ensure dignity for fallen soldiers during transportation. Michael understood that change took time, but he was hopeful. He saw the beginnings of a new culture, one where honoring fallen soldiers was not just a duty, but a deep value shared by all. His experience had become a catalyst for this change. Throughout all this, Michael kept in close contact with Corporal Carter's family. They became lifelong friends, bound by the shared experience of loss and respect. The family often invited Michael to ceremonies, memorials, and events honoring James and other soldiers. One particularly meaningful moment came during a ceremony on Veterans Day, when the family and Michael gathered with the community to remember all who served. Michael spoke about the importance of never forgetting the sacrifices made and of standing together in support. As the years passed, Michael's role evolved from escort to advocate, counselor, and friend. He helped families navigate the complex process of military honors, offered comfort, and worked tirelessly to improve the system. His work touched thousands of lives and helped bring healing to many. Michael also found personal growth through this journey. The pain he had witnessed had changed him, but so had the courage and love he had seen. He learned that honor is more than ceremony. It is about respect in everyday actions, standing up for those who cannot speak for themselves. He often reflected on the journey that began with one fallen soldier and one man's determination to escort him home. Michael realized that the real story was about the power of compassion and the importance of fighting for what is right. Even when the odds are against you, this story became an inspiration to many. Michael's experience showed that one person can make a difference, that respect and honor matter deeply, and that standing up for the fallen is a duty that touches us all. Michael continued to share this message, encouraging others to volunteer as escorts, support veterans, and honor the sacrifices made. He believed that every fallen soldier deserved to be remembered with dignity. Every family deserved compassion and care. The airline that once resisted now proudly shared the story of Michael's escort mission, using it as a training example, to teach staff about respect and humanity. Michael's name became known among military and veteran circles as someone who had helped change a system for the better as the years went by. Michael never forgot Corporal James Carter. He kept his memory alive through stories, events, and the ongoing work to honor all fallen soldiers. James's sacrifice became a symbol of courage and a reminder of the respect in Michael's journey had started, with a simple decision to escort a fallen soldier. But it had become a lifelong mission to ensure dignity, respect, and honor for all who serve. His story showed that even in the darkest times, kindness and determination can bring light and change.